What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Ask Paul, the podcast, where I, Paul Abernathy, attempt to answer all of your pressing questions about the National Electrical Code and all things electrically related by going to our portal over at paulabernathy.com, where you can submit your questions to me and I'll answer via email, or if lucky enough to be selected, your question will be addressed in a podcast, much like today's podcast. Now, we are up to episode 95 of the Let's Ask Paul podcast, but I'll remind you that we have literally hundreds and hundreds of podcasts that you can listen to. This is just the Let's Ask. I am definitely less asked. I can promise you that if you ever see me. But the Let's Ask podcast is only one of our multiple podcasts that we do. The largest one we do is Master the NEC podcast. And that's going to cover all of these as well as other special episodes. So if you're listening on any of your favorite listening platforms, like Apple Podcast is probably the most popular. I didn't realize that, but I didn't think there was that many Apple devices out there. But it is the number one listened platform for our shows all across our spectrum of podcasts. So Let's Ask Paul, the Electrify podcast, the Master the NEC podcast, it's kind of a blanket of podcasts that you can listen to over on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can listen on Spotify. That's what I listen on. You can listen on Deezer, iHeartRadio. You can even listen on your Alexa devices. I mean, there's so many ways. But one of the good ways to do it, and I do it when I'm in the car if I'm listening to other podcasts, but you can listen on the Spotify app, but also if you want to listen to our podcast, if you're a kind of a code junkie, then you can listen on our app. So our app is free. All you got to do is go over to our website. You'll see at the top header, just go to electricalcodeacademy.net or .com or .org, whatever. And at the top, you'll see it says download app. Or you can go to our dedicated page, which is www.necchat.com. Yeah, it sounds just like it is. It's necchat.com. National Electrical Collective Chat. That's what it is. So check that out. But we're up to episode 95 of the Let's Ask Paul podcast. But remember, there are hundreds of podcasts that you can scroll through. And I do my best to try to categorize them and give you a little bit of a topic header. But you know what? Just listen. Go pick a random one and listen. I think there's over 600 and something. And the number of hours you could actually listen 24 hours a day for an entire year and never listen to a new one. It just constantly, there's that many out there right now. So check them out. We've been doing it for years. All right. So we're not a newbie to this area, right? And there's many people out there remembers the Electrical Guru all the way back when I was doing this. Oh my God, wow. It's been it'll be almost 30 years ago or 25 years ago or whatnot, well before they called it podcast. I can promise you that. But we have a lot of episodes out there, so go check them out. Okay, let me get situated here. Welcome to the show. If this is the first time you've ever come to the show, where the hell you been? We've been doing this for quite a while. So anyway, we're glad you found us. And hopefully you like it. Thumbs up, share it with other people, bookmark it. Let everybody in your crew know. Go on social media and be our little social media warriors. Go out there and let people know about this great podcast that you heard about. And you know, if there's haters out there, be my defender. Say, hey, y'all suck. Paul's a great guy. Okay. So anyway, we're all the way up here to this episode. So again, it's all sponsored by Electrical Code Academy. It's our way of giving back, trying to answer questions that, you know, you seek in the answer. And we're going to do our best to try to give you an answer. You can agree to disagree. It's all good. You know, it's all good. I got that one guy out there. He knows who he is. He loves to hit that thumbs down. That's fine. Don't be sure to hit it twice. Okay. All right. So in this episode, we're going to go over some questions and see if I can't answer them for you. Remember, if it's not your flavor and you want to submit your question, just go to paulabernathy.com. It's just like it sounds, paulabernathy.com. And we have set up a very convenient portal for you to be able to send your questions. Send whatever you want. We'll do our best. Okay, so this question, it came in today, or it didn't come in today. It's in my pool. I get hundreds of these things, so I have to go through them. A lot of them are simple that I just do email. But this is a common one that I seem to get quite a bit. So I don't know if I've addressed this before, but I'm going to address it today. Hey, Paul, love your podcast. I love that you give back to the industry. I'm a member of your Fast Tracks program. Well, that's great. Hold on. Where's my... Okay. I'm a member of your Fast Tracks program, and I've heard you talk about this before. Can you please explain when you would use Table 31015B1 versus Table 31015B2? Both are dealing with ambient temperature. If I happen to have an ambient temperature of 40 degrees C, why would I not use 31015B2 rather than 31015B1? What's the difference? Okay, great question. And it's one of those, you can tell he's a Fast Track student because it's one of those, and we've covered this in a Fast Tracks Wednesday night session. It's one of those thought-provoking type of questions that say, well, God, everybody's looked at these tables. And I should mention, I'm in the 2020 edition. I have not made the change yet. I had not gone over to 2023 just yet, but we will be going soon. And for anybody that wants to know about our Fast Tracks 2023 NEC, it's not going to be out until probably the end of February or maybe even the mid of March. So it's just too early right now for that. Okay. All right. So let's kind of go over this real quick. So first thing I'll tell you, we're in the 2020 code. So if you go to 310.16 and you look at not the table, okay, don't go to the table yet. If you just go to 310.16 and you'll notice there's a little N in the margin. And that's because we have now created a section specifically in here rather than you just going to a table. In the past, there was no 310.15b16. It was just the table. But now we have a code reference in the 2020. You'll see little N's in the margin. That means this is new. And so it's now 310.16, what it used to be before it went to 310.15b16. So now it's where it needs to be. But you'll notice that there is a specific there's specific items here under 310.16, 310.17, 310.18, 310.19, 310.20, and that type of thing. You get it? You see that? Okay, so the predominant table that we're going to use when it comes to dealing with, say, an ambient condition where we got a temperature that's other than 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're talking about the basic wiring. This is what this is what you do every day. You're going to be using the ampacity values from 310.16. That's the ampacity king when it comes to the NEC. That's what we're using. So anytime you're doing NM cable, THHN, all those type of things, and you're thinking about ampacity, you're going to be going to 310.16. It's just what you do. It's the one that deals with a situation where if you look at it, it's talking about it applies to conductors that'll be insulated conductors that'll be installed in raceways, cables, or direct buried in the earth, like a USC. It would be like an NM cable. It would be THHN, individual conductors under 310. All of those type of things. This is where we'd be going for the ampacity. Now let's start out first looking at 310.16. Again, don't look at the ampacity table. Just look at 310.16. Now, you're probably thinking, but Paul, I'm listening and I'm in the 2017 NEC. Well, then you're going to look at the actual header on the top of the actual ampacity table for the information that I'm talking about. So in the 2020, they just took all of that information from the header and moved it over in its own code section. That's the only difference, okay? So you can follow along if you're on the 2017. You're just going to look at the top of the table. We're going to look at the actual code section because that's new for the 2020. So let's look at 310.16. Here's what it says. It says ampacities of insulated conductors in raceways, cables, or earth direct burial. It says the ampacities shall be as specified in table 310.16 where all of the following conditions apply. So the ampacities that are in this table, 310.16, the ampacities that are in this table, this is for the conditions that are born out of this table. And what are they? Number one, for conductors that are 0 to 2,000 volt rated. So our traditional 600 volt, 1,000 volt, okay, we're going to use 310.16. We're good so far. The next, it says conductors with a rating, and this is an insulation rating, of 60, 75, or 90 degrees C. Okay, they're going to use this table. And obviously we have three separate columns, 60, 75, and 90. Makes sense so far. Number 3, and here's where we start to think. It says wiring is installed in a 30 degrees C, 86 degrees Fahrenheit ambient temperature. Okay, so there you got to think for a second. You told me it was 40 degrees C. This table deals with the ampacities at 30 degrees C or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So if it's other than this table, other than what it says here, this is the ampacities if it's 30 degrees C, right? So if it's other than 30 degrees C, that is when we're going to turn and look at table 31015B1. Now you're going to say, well, okay, I get it, but why wouldn't I use B2? Because that says the temperatures are based on 40 degrees C. So the difference is when you look at B1, the 30 degree is based on the reference from 31016 and 31017. Both of those talk about 30 degrees C, and that's the basis of this ampacity table. So if I'm going to be altering this table, these ampacities, if I'm going to change it in some way, then I can only use 31015B1 if we're talking about an ambient temperature correction, because it starts out saying it's based on the 30 degrees C, which is what 310.16 ampacities are based upon. So you're not going to use 31015B2 because that's based on the 40 degrees C. So the next thing you'll say to yourself, when the hell would I use the 40 degrees C? Well, let's go back. Now, if you look at 31016, you'll notice that that talks about 30 degrees C. And also the last one we should look at says when there's not more than 3 current conductors. So the ampacities from this table are accurate continuously, indefinitely at this ampacity based on this insulation ratings, whether it's 60, 75, or 90, as long as all these conditions are met. If you're in a perfect world and it's 30 degrees Celsius and there's not more than 3 current conductors, then a 14 gauge, let's do different. A 1-aught copper can pull 170 amperes under the 90 degree column indefinitely and never violate the insulation's rating of 90 degrees C. It's never going to melt it down because that's a perfect condition. Now, when the conditions aren't perfect, when there's more than 3 current conductors, or in this example of the question, when the ambient temperature is other than 30 degrees Celsius, whether it's above it or below it, then I have to use the corresponding table to do that ambient correction. And since we're looking at ampacity out of 31016 and 30 degrees Celsius is the base, that's when you look at 31015B1 and it says the ambient temperature corrections factors based on 30 degrees C, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's why we use 31015B1. And that's what we use for 31016 and 31017. And you can see that right in there. Okay. Now, 31018, 31019, 31020. If you look at those, 31021, if you look at all of those, you'll notice that it says wiring is based on the 40 degrees C. And for you folks that are in the 2017 code, if you look at the top of each of those tables, you will see the temperature rating in the header. It's just in the 2020, we moved it all to this nicely, put it in the code in language, okay? So that's the only difference. So that's how you know. And so if I'm doing something in an installation that has to do with 310.18, 310.19, 310.20, whatnot, then if I'm going to have to do an adjustment, right? Excuse me, a correction, not an adjustment, that's for the number of current carrying, a correction based on ambient temperature, then I would be using 310.15B2 because the base temperature is 40 degrees C. And that's what it is for 310.18, 310.19, 310.20, 310.21. You get me? You get me? So a lot of students that can write in their code book will take and do brackets from the bottom of 310.17 all the way up to the top of 310.16 right in the margin. and write down B1. And then from 310.18 all the way down to 310.21, they'll write B2, just in case you get it on an exam. But typically, since most of the exams are out there are asking questions based on general use wiring and the cable methods and things like that, you're more often not don't have to worry about 310.15 B2. Now, there are some people out there that tell you to draw an X through it. I would never tell you to do that, ever, because I don't want to mislead you into an exam and have somebody on an exam turn around and ask you a question based on and you need to use 310.15 B2. It might be an ampacity question that utilizes 310.18 or 19 or 20 or 21. So I would never do that to you. I'm not that kind of instructor. I don't want you marking anything out in your code book, okay? Because to me, it's all fair game on an exam, right? And it's all fair game in real life too, because you don't know what you're going to run into, okay? All right, so that's it for that question. Let's see if we have that was a good one because that kind of touched all the little pieces on it. So let's see, what else do we have here on today's episode? Okay, let's see here. Let me blow this up a little bit because, again, being able to see it. Hey, Paul, I love your podcast and your videos. I've got a question about a pull calculation. On the job, I am routinely arguing with my supervisor when the installation has more than 360 degrees of bends between pull points in the raceway installation. What can I do to make him understand that he can't have more than 360 degrees between pull points, and he also intends to pull the conductors through the pull boxes if added, he states, so he would be ignoring them either way. Even if they're put in to meet the code, he says he would not use them and pull it straight through without utilizing these pull boxes. That is why he says he doesn't worry about them and he doesn't care about the number of bends. Thanks in advance. And again, love your podcast. Okay. All right. So let me that's a lot. So let me kind of dissect it. Did I say dissect? What the hell is that? All right, dissect. So it sounds like this is a raceway installation. Maybe it's rigid, EMT, I don't know. Okay. And the code tells you in the code that you're not to exceed 360 degrees of bend between pull points. And that's typically .26 in all of the different wiring method that has something to do with bending. The ones that have to do with the 360, more like raceways, things like that. EMT, rigid, IMC, those type of things. So they're going to have it's going to say bends and it's going to say the number in one run. And that's what it says in the code, right? And so if we just look at rigid metal conduit real quick to kind of talk about this question, because there's two pieces here. There's the perception of what he's challenging his supervisor, and I don't know the outcome of that. If he did or didn't, I don't know the nature of his supervisor. Sounds like the supervisor's pretty stubborn, telling him that if he did use pull boxes, he wouldn't use them anyway. So we'll talk about that. But then, trying to explain there's a reason why we don't exceed 360 degrees of bends between pull points, and that includes offsets, kicks, 90s, 45s, whatever, between pull points. So in the .26, it says, number in one run, it says, there shall not be more. Okay, now, shall not is a mandatory rule. There shall not be more than the equivalent of 4 quarter bends, 90, 90, 90, 90, 360 degrees, between pull points, for example. Conduit bodies and boxes. So pull point could be a conduit body, pull point could be the box. The point here is trying to make sure that you're going to pull the cable or pull the conductors through a raceway and not damage the sidewall or not elongate and create a tension issue and cause problems to the conductors, right? Makes sense, right? So obviously these bends, you've got the weight of the conductors, you've got these bends. Now traditionally, if you do have a number of bins in a pull, you want to make sure that you go through the bins first. Don't situate your pull where the bins are at the end, because then you have all this weight that's laterally being pulled through a raceway. And then all of a sudden now you're going to try to pull it through a bunch of bins at the end. So you got to think about your install. Okay. I'm going to give you that from advice from a guy that's done a lot of raceways in the past. Think about your routing first. Okay. Now I'm going to address this here. The code tells you can't have more than 360 degrees of bends between pull points. This is with the anticipation. What the hell am I tongue-tied? Am I having a stroke or something today? What the hell's going on? So between pull points, making sure you don't exceed 360 is so that you don't do potential sidewall damage to the insulation of the conductor. And then, of course, there it becomes weak and it becomes a failure point. I get it. That's what the point is here, right? You're using pulling lubricant. You're doing everything you need to do right. You're making sure that you're hitting your bends first, not wait until you get to the end. It's assumed here that the engineer has designed this layout, right? And if the engineers designed this layout, then hopefully they've done a pull calculation. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've been on a couple things where I have to sit in to engineering meetings representing our wire that we make as a manufacturer. Everybody knows I work for a wire and cable manufacturer. Shout out to Encore Wire and Kevin Porter, who works for me. And we have a great team over there at Encore Wire. Love them. Love Encore Wire. Love our CEO, Daniel Jones. And Kevin Kiefer is my boss and VP of, I don't know what the hell he's a VP of. He's a VP of a lot of stuff. I know he handles the security people too. I'm like, give me a gun. I'll protect myself. But anyway, I've been there almost 9 years now. I love it. Great family environment. If you're ever up in McKinney, Texas, and you can get a tour of our facility, it's freaking amazing. It's like Disneyland for the wire business. It's like everybody else is kind of sprinkled all over the country. We're all right here in McKinney. You wouldn't believe it. It's like 450 acres. And one of our plants, one of our storage buildings is like the size of like freaking 6 football fields. It's freaking amazing. If you fly over it, do Google Earth and look at it. It's just blow your mind. It might not be updated on Google Earth. I don't know. Anyway, great bunch of people, really care about what we do, and we make wire and cable. That's it. And thank God they allow me to do my academy. So that's another blessing. Thank you to everybody there who supports us, because they do support what I do. Okay, I don't know where I was at. Okay, so I sit in these engineering meetings, and sometimes I look at these pulls, and I'll ask them, I'm saying, well, you're exceeding 360 degrees worth of bends here. Are you putting pull boxes? And they go, yes, but we're not using them. So they're meeting the code because they know they can't have more than 360 degrees between bend points, but they are going to pull straight through them. So then the engineers ask me, what are my feelings on that? And my feelings on that, if you're not going to use the pull box, then they're not there. You get me? You're meeting the code as far as the bending thing, but you're simply just pulling them through, and that's okay as long as you do a pull calculation and the values come back and say it's okay. So for code wise, the pull boxes are there. You're just choosing not to use them. That's fine. But I need to have a pull calc. I need to see it. And there's so many good pull calculators out there. One of the best ones out there, and some of the best pulling lubricants out there on the game is Polywater. So if you've never had Polywater pulling lubricant, dude, you don't know what you're missing, because that is the bomb when it comes to pulling lubricant. No doubt. So seek them out. Polywater. It sounds neat, doesn't it? Polywater. But anyway, Polywater, in conjunction with our Super Slick that we use on our products, and many manufacturers use a slippery agent, that type of thing, whether it's in the emulsification or it's applied topically, it doesn't matter. It's pulling lubricant. So it adds in, and I always recommend additional pulling lubricant, just the way I am. It's the electrician in me. Adding it to help reduce that coefficient of friction is always a good thing, especially if it's a long run. So I'm big on the pull lubricant. Don't be shy on it. Okay, it's one of those things that pays dividends to use it properly. Anything that can make that. So in that case, as long as they got the pull boxes in, I don't really care. But I still want to see a pull calculation because you're not using the pull boxes. So you're doing a dynamic pull through all of these bins. And I want that all plugged into a pull calculator. And also, Polywater has a pull calculator you can get as well, right? And it is amazing. It's an awesome pull calculator. I don't trust manufacturers' pull calculators, to be honest with you. I like third parties, and Polywater has one of the best. So go to Polywater's website, tell them that you heard it from me, and ask them for their pull calculator. Say, Paul said you'll give it to me. See if they'll give it to you. But it's a great calculator. It takes a little bit of a learning curve. Maybe I'll do a video one day on how to use the Polywater calculator. It's pretty awesome. But I want to see all pull calculations. Now, at Encore Wire, we get a lot of engineers that submit to us and want me to do the pull calculation. It's really what engineers should be doing, but we'll do it. But I'll only do it if it's Encore Wire products. Don't be sending me something from somebody else. I ain't doing it. I don't, Okay. So to answer your question, what should you do? You voiced your opinion to your supervisor. They've come out and said what they're going to say. If they don't put the pull boxes in and they exceed 360, then you have a legit issue. Now, they still can do a pull calc. And if the end company, like in our case, my meetings, there was the end company, this big, and I can't say their name, but they were huge all over the country, big outfit manufacturer of vehicles. Okay, is that enough for you? And they are okay with it because it's under their jurisdiction. They're okay with it as long as the pull calculations come back. And that's the reason I have to sit in all these meetings, because we need to make sure that the pull calcs come out. And they ask me, are you okay with it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with it. And I always tell them, I'm like, are you okay that they don't have the number of pull boxes they need? And they go, yeah, we're okay with it. Well, that's their choice. It's not my choice. I'm not here to be their AHJ. All I care about is, all right, well, I'm going to do the same calculation as if you put pull boxes in, because you're telling me you're not going to use them anyway. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to pretend like they're not even there. And that's how I'm going to do my pull calculation, right? Now, if you're out there, electrician, you're installing in the field and you're doing raceways, large raceways, and somebody hopefully has done a pull calculation. So one, you know that you're not exceeding your raceway fill. That can be bad, jamming effect, things like that. And then somebody's done a pull calculation to feel very comfortable about it. Make sure you're using proper, enough pulling lube to make it fine. Even though companies who say we make a conductor that doesn't need pulling lubricant, that's fine for short runs. You probably don't, because the coefficient of friction is going to be pretty low, rather than dry pulling a conductor through there with whether it's thermoplastic or thermal set. It's kind of sticky. So as long as there's some, you're going to be okay. But if it's any significant run, and people push me all the time for what distance are you talking about, Paul? Everybody likes values. They want you to give them a number that they can feel good about. I'm like, okay, well, anytime you have a run that's over 150 to 200 feet, then use pulling lubricant. Unless your conductors already come with it, then you're okay up to that distance. After that, even if it does have it on it already, don't be shy and go ahead and use some additional pulling lubricant. Why not? It's certainly not going to hurt anything, right? Okay. So anyway, hopefully that answered your question. What should you do? You voiced your opinion. They don't want to listen. Just remember, it is this stage. It's your supervisor's responsibility. It's not yours. Just keep doing what they tell you to do. And this isn't the case where I don't think the squeaky wheel is going to help any, because your supervisor's already made it clear that they know that they have to have the pull boxes. They might be choosing not to put the pull boxes, and that's up to them. If the AHJs aren't gigging them on it, if the owner of the facility is not gigging them on it and they know about it and the engineers are designing it this way, then there's not a whole lot I could tell you to do about it. Just bite your tongue, get your experience. Kudos for you for knowing better. And then someday you're going to be that supervisor. You're going to be that leader. I know this because you're listening to our podcast. You're already on your road to being a leader. So I know that you will know how to do this when it's your time to do it. Okay. So right now, bite your tongue. You've let them know. Suck up the knowledge. Don't be a squeaky wheel. And again, you've already voiced your opinion, and it sounds like you did it very professionally. So that's awesome. And just go on your merry way. And it's not going to do you any good if after you've explained it and they've jumped all down your throat and then they're not going to change it. it's no sense in you beating a dead drum at this point. Okay. You're so lower on the totem pole that if something goes wrong, it's on them, not you anyway. Okay. All right. Hopefully that answered that question. So, that to the best of my ability that I answered that question. Remember, you can send me an email about anything you want to ratchet jaw about, whatever, something that's happened on the job. Hey, it's a change. Why don't you send some Let's Ask Pauls about an argument you've had on the job or something interesting? I love talking interesting topics. Let's open this thing up a little bit and ask all kinds of things. Anyway, if you've got any questions you want to submit, go to paulabernathy.com, submit it, and I will either answer in an email or if selected in an upcoming podcast. Folks, I appreciate everything you do, the support we get, and share it with everybody. Give us a thumbs up. Even that hater out there who doesn't like our show, hit the thumbs down twice, and I will catch you in the next episode. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless.